All right. Hello, everyone. It is Monday, May 22nd, 2017 at 1 o'clock Eastern Time, and this is Special Edition Live. I'm your host today, Daniela Norden. I'm the Digital Engagement Manager at Skidmore College in usually sunny Saratoga Springs, New York. It's a little gray today, but that's okay. On today's live broadcast, we're talking about social media campaign for admitted students. And I think before we launch into everything, I'm going to give you all a little bit of backstory. I've been at Skidmore for about 6.5 years. And these past few years, I've been noticing a downward trend in admitted students using some of the custom hashtags around College Decision Day. So I thought that I might not be alone. And I started doing some research and kind of looking around and seeing what information was out there. And I came across this great post by one of our guests today, Casey Thomas from Arizona State University, about using Snapchat for admitted students. I'm going to go ahead and tweet a blog post from Higher Ed Live that includes Casey's article in there because I think that it's great reading for everybody. And I was impressed by Casey's article, so I reached out to her and asked her a couple of questions to write a post, and it turns out that she came back with such great helpful information on the topics that I couldn't help but ask her to come on an episode and share her wisdom with everyone. But because this is Higher Ed Live, and we like to keep people on their toes, and because we have so many people coming from all over higher ed, I thought it would be a more robust episode if I threw everybody for a loop and invited another guest on from a school that's really different from ASU, and that's why Eric Clark from Quincy College is joining us today too. So we're going to have a really nice conversation and dig into this from a lot of different angles. So I'm really excited about today's episode, and I hope you all are too. But before we dive into everything, I'm going to take care of a little housekeeping. Special Edition Live is part of the Higher Ed Live network. Our episodes offer you direct access to the best and brightest minds in education, like Casey and Eric. So be part of our live broadcast by sharing your knowledge and participate in today's discussion by tweeting us using hashtag Higher Ed Live. I'm going to be keeping an eye on that. So if you all have questions today, send them using that hashtag, and I'll make sure that Casey and Eric get them. All of our episodes are free and easy to access in the video archives at higheredlive.com, or you can take Higher Ed Live with you on the go by subscribing to the podcast, one of my personal favorite ways to listen to these episodes. Higher Ed Live is produced by M. Stoner, a digital-first agency committed to tailored solutions that drive real results. I'll go ahead and tweet a link out so you guys can connect with M. Stoner as well. Okay, now that all of that is taken care of, we can go ahead and get started. I want to welcome our guests, Casey and Eric, and I'm just going to turn it over to you guys and let you introduce yourselves. Tell us a little bit about your role, how long you've been at the institution, a little bit about your institution, and a little bit about the admission processes there. Casey, do you want to start?
Sure. I'm Quincy Thomas, and I work in the admissions office at Arizona State University. I've been with the admissions office for about 9 years, almost 9 years, and have been doing the social media for about the past 6 years. I actually created my position, so nobody was doing social media for the admissions office until I got here. So I've been doing it the whole time. I have a lot of experiential knowledge from being in control of it the entire time. ASU is a comprehensive research institution. We're in the Pac-12, we're Division I, we're one of the largest universities in the country, and our mission, our charter says that we like to be known by whom we include and how they succeed, not by who we exclude. So we do have standardized admissions criteria, non-competitive admissions criteria, meaning every student who meets our criteria does get admitted, and we want as many of them to come to ASU as are able, and that is somewhat different than a lot of different universities who are a little bit more exclusive. And so our application does not have essays or letters of recommendation. We're looking at your academic record, and this last year our freshman class was 11,500 students.
That is a large class, Casey.
Yes.
That's a lot of work that you've created for yourself in that position. Eric, you want to tell us a little bit about Quincy and your role there?
Most definitely. Thank you again for having me. So I've been at Quincy College. It'll be 1 year last Saturday. So I'm definitely the rookie member of this panel. So Quincy College is much different than ASU in most regards, except for that ethos and that mission. We're an open access institution. We pride ourselves in being accessible to students and helping provide upward mobility to the students that live in our area. We are a commuter campus. We have two campuses, one about 6 miles south of Boston and then another one in Plymouth, Massachusetts. And we serve about 5,500 students. Most of our programs are non-selective, but we do have some selective health sciences programs, surgical tech, medical lab technician, nursing, things of that nature. And we are not a community college. We are not funded by the state, but in the same sense as the community colleges. But we are the last institution, I believe, in the Commonwealth that is associated with a city. So we are private, but we have a nice collaboration with the city. Yeah, I'm definitely excited to jump into this conversation to talk about how we've been using the social media to engage with prospective students in a slightly different way than what has historically taken place.
Awesome. Thank you both for being here. I'm glad we picked not only opposite coasts, but really two different schools here. So hopefully everybody has something that resonates with them. So again, just a reminder to use #HigherEdLive, and I'll do my best to ask your questions as they come in, but I have a few of my own. The first thing I'm wondering is, are both of you doing current social media campaigns for your admitted students now? And if you are, can you walk us through what those look like? When did they start? Some of the components, all that good stuff. And since we started with Casey, maybe I'll shoot it over to Eric first.
Perfect. Thank you. So we're doing we have a pretty robust digital presence, and I would say our marketing team is fantastic, both collaborating with departments across campus and then coming up with very innovative and unique ideas to support each division. But we aren't doing campaign in a sense where we're asking students to tweet to a specific hashtag to let their friends know that they're accepted, or to use it as a quasi marketing plan. We really dug deep and really tried to identify what were some of the potential pain points that our students would come across, whether it be with financial aid, registering for classes and things of that nature. So a substantial part of the effort that I've been involved with has been, in a sense, collaborating with the other divisions or the other departments. So for example, we did a Snapchat series where my colleagues in the financial aid office put together a pretty creative video with the marketing team to really talk about the 2016-2017 FAFSA, as well as the 2017-2018 FAFSA. So we took that content from Snapchat and then leveraged it across multiple platforms in an effort to educate prospective students and equip them with valuable knowledge that they would need to transition into the institution. And at the end of the day, making that transition much more seamless and much easier. And I'm finding that we're having a lot of success with that, and with regards to having students come through and asking really good questions and really pointed questions, because they've been equipped with enough sort of foundational knowledge to dig a little bit deeper and develop a greater sense of self-efficacy with regards to financial aid and matriculation.
It is fascinating to me to think about consuming financial aid information on Snapchat, but it makes sense to be where students are and hitting them with information that they want, you know? So I'm surprised I've never thought of that. And if somebody else steals that idea too, we might all be doing that next year.
Not a bad thing.
So Casey, can you tell us a little bit about your admitted students' social media campaigns?
Yeah, so I mean, certainly things happen throughout the year, right? So one of our, piggybacking off financial aid, one of the things we do in December is the 12 days of gift aid, where it's mostly on our Facebook page, but then we highlight it on our other accounts as well. But we highlight at least 12 different scholarships that are on our scholarship website that students can apply for. Something we have found on our Facebook page is that parents are tending to gravitate to our Facebook page, and they do what I like to call the nag tag, where they will write a comment with their student's name and nothing else, just Brandon, Sarah, look at this. And it gets it in front of their students, but really it's the parents that are seeing that. post. And so we highlight at least 12 different scholarships that are for various populations. So we'll highlight one for transfers, we'll highlight one for out-of-state students, some for Arizona students, just to be as eclectic as possible. And it really helps them understand that we have hundreds of scholarships that they can apply for. And some of them are worth thousands of dollars, and some of them are worth $500, and they're equally important for you to apply for. So that's something we do in December. And then this year, what we did, we always make May 1st, which is College Decision Day, Future Sun Devil Day. So Future Sun Devil is our main hashtag, and then all of our admissions social media accounts are Future Sun Devils. So we're at Future Sun Devils on everything because we represent everyone. But our hashtag is Future Sun Devils, so we encourage students on May 1 to announce that they're attending ASU. And we've done that for several years. And last year, the College Signing Day initiative really came up from the White House, and they made College Signing Day April 26th, which was not May 1. It was a little difficult. And so we tried to make our Future Sun Devil Day into a Future Sun Devil Week. And we came up with content. This is all last year, 2016. We came up with a ton of content that students could post about every day for 7 days. And what we found is that they were not willing to post for 7 days on their social networks about being a Future Sun Devil. That they'll do it once and they'll do it very proudly, very excitedly, but 7 days was too much. So this year we cut it back down to just a day. College Signing Day moved to May 5th. And we actually did some in-person activities with some local high schools the week prior. But on May 1, what we encouraged students to do was still use our hashtag, right? Still post on whatever social network they're comfortable with, but we specifically highlighted Snapchat and made it user-generated. So similar to the article that you found, which was about one of our visit days, we did the same process. And what we did was we encouraged students to send us snaps announcing that they were a Future Sun Devil, and then we would add them to our story. So I screenshotted it was an all-day process, but I screenshotted every snap that came into us and posted it, and we ended up with a Snapchat story of 270 snaps from students. And it was 5 minutes and 22 seconds long. And I was shocked that within the first 24 hours, we had a 35% completion rate, but within the second 24 hours, those last posts that we got that then became 24 hours old, it ended up being about a 50% view rate, like completion rate of number of people who saw the first one to the last one. And so that was really impressive that people stuck with it. And even my coworkers that I talked to who were following along, they said, oh, we just wanted to get through the story to say we had done it, like just that we did it and got through it. And so that was really interesting, that I wondered if it being long was going to hurt it, and people really reacted to it. What else was really interesting is the number of screenshots we got on posts. So these students would send us a photo, and I loaded them onto our story for 1 second. So they weren't even long for every person. And we had, what was it, over 466 screenshots from our story. And now 267 of those were of a little pledge that we had created that says, I am a Future Sun Devil, and they could write their name on it through Snapchat. So that was a majority of them, but another 200 screenshots were, I assume, the students screenshotting their own post that had made it on our story. So we've really kind of shifted into this form of trying to create, Insta fame, right? Giving these students their literal 1 second of fame on our story, and it has worked really well for us. So that is a new thing that we've tried this year that we've never done before, and we've done it twice now to great success. But the students really like to share with us because we're part of the community that's excited that they're attending ASU versus all over their other social networks that might be a little more public, and their friends might say, yeah, we get it. We know where you're going to college. I'm going to this other college, so I'm not that interested that you're going to ASU. And so they can get away with posting that about once, but when it's just to us and then shared with our community, they're much more likely to post. And we had several students send us multiple snaps trying to get on the story more than once. So it ended up being very effective for us this year.
Of course, I was on mute then. That's like really, really exciting. And I think since you both mentioned Snapchat, we're just going to have to talk about it and talk about strategies around Snapchat. First of all, how are you getting your metrics? Like, are you manually doing this?
Currently, yes. So there are a few third-party apps that if you pay money, you can use them. The only fear with those is that they are outside of Snapchat's terms of use. And so if Snapchat, for whatever reason, decided they didn't like those third-party apps, they could lock your account. So we haven't moved to that yet. We may in the future. But it is my day all day long where as people send us snaps, I open them, I screenshot them, I save them, and then I reload them. And I actually keep a notebook full of everybody's name and what their snap was to make sure that I paid attention, I got everybody. And then the ones that I can get up, I will. Some of them are a video or something that aren't easy to save. And a third-party app would be able to do that. But then I make sure that I check 24 hours later on the metrics, because when you open your story, you can see the number of views. And so I can look and say, okay, that first snap that we sent 23 and a half hours ago has 1,900 views. And the one we sent just 8 hours ago has 800 views. And then you can do your completion rate from that. So simple division, and you end up with a completion rate. But yeah, it's a lot of just me all day on my phone.
Oh, that's amazing. Eric, do you have similar stats for some of the content you were putting out around financial aid? Or at this point, are you just like, we should just hire Casey to do all of our manual Snapchat stats for us?
That's the tricky part. The marketing department holds the keys to the kingdom with regards to the metrics. But one thing that's slightly different between ASU and Quincy is we're still working to build that brand recognition. Our population is diverse in nature with regards to age. So we do have traditional students that come in right out of high school, but we also have adult learners. So the marketing team has done a really good job to integrate sort of cross-pollination of different platforms, whether it be promoting the Snapchat on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, just to let people know. I've done some Snapchat takeovers. So for example, for our nursing orientation, when at the very beginning of my tenure, I took over the Snapchat account. I went down to the Plymouth campus and gave a tour of that facility, and using my own personal networks to build brand awareness. So over the last year, I think we've done a really, really good job with building and starting to foster a greater sense of community. And I think after we do that for another year or so, we're going to have, I wouldn't say we're going to have the same type of metrics because our student population is obviously much smaller, but perhaps we'll see some similar comparisons with regards to percentages and whatnot. I had a question about completion rate just for a quick second. So if we look at the 24-hour mark with the first slide and then with the last one, do you ever wait until the end of the 24 hours for the last one to calculate?
Yeah, so I did that with this one. So when I did it with just the first 24 hours, when the first snap was 24 hours old, we had a 35% completion rate. And I had uploaded our last snaps around 10 p.m. and then I went to bed. So we didn't add any more. And when I woke up the next morning, I only had about 7 more snaps that had come in overnight, and I did not add them because I didn't want people to continue sending us stuff. I wanted them to know the story had ended. But by the 24 hours of the last snap we had posted, it had gotten over 1,000 views as well. So our completion rate over about the 48-hour period ended up being 50% instead of 35%.
That's cool.
That's still pretty good. Eric, I want to go back to something that you had said about even different students, I guess, in general, from adult learners to first year. It's so important to know which platform and what audience is on which platform. So it makes sense for somebody like ASU to use Snapchat because obviously that's where their engagement is. And Casey also mentioned parents being on Facebook, which I think we're all sort of aware that parents are owning Facebook and Facebook is a little more formal. Can you guys maybe talk about what strategies on which platforms you've seen work? I don't know who wants to go first.
Casey, you want to go first? Go for it.
You want me to go on that one?
Sure.
So we do a lot of different things. Some of our populations are hard to find, right? So for me, the most difficult target audience is our transfer student population because some of them identify themselves as transfer, others don't, and so it can be difficult to find out who they are. One thing that we use is we do have a private social network that we call Devil to Devil. It is the TargetX Schools app, but you can create separate cohorts there, and so in the past, we've always kept our incoming freshmen and transfer students together. And the transfer students sometimes get a little bored with some of the freshman content. So our freshman students are graduating high school. They're posting prom photos, they're posting the graduation photos. There's a lot of life events happening for an 18-year-old. And our transfer students might be 19, they might be 39, they might be 59, and they're just not as interested, or they're not in that same life space. So this year we separated them. And now the transfer students have their own space, and our freshman students have their own space. And the transfer students are willing to post where they're from. Like hey, I'm from here, I'm transferring from here, I'm very excited. But they are not as engaging even with each other as our freshman students are. So they just have less to connect with. So we're still trying to work on that best way to connect with them and make them feel a part of each other. But we do find that Facebook is really convenient for international students as well. Most of our private messages on Facebook come from international students. Twitter seems to be our best platform for people asking us questions. So we'll get any type of user, mostly incoming students, asking, how long should it take for me to be admitted? What are the admissions criteria for the program? And they're also the ones that are most likely to, that's the first place people tend to share that they got admitted to ASU, is we'll see a tweet about it. And so we always try to interact with them. So, you know, when we talk about admitted student campaigns, for us, we started admitting students in September, and it's rolling admissions. So our main campaign is trying to find every student who mentions somewhere online that they've been admitted to ASU, and try to connect with them to let them feel special, that we see them and we're excited for them as an individual that they're coming to ASU.
That's awesome. And we see some similar sort of characteristics with regards to international students at Quincy. We find that that's a majority of the direct messages that I can respond to. I'm actually an administrator of the institutional page, so I often, well, not often, when I see them, I'll jump in and answer questions as me, the human, not the brand page itself. But I think, to circle back to the question, I think Facebook is probably one of our most active communities, and I think part of it has to do with, we have some really phenomenal faculty that are super engaging on the platform, whether they're fielding questions from their own students on their personal accounts, sharing research, things of that nature. I think they've done a really good job sort of establishing the culture that this is a tool that students can use to engage with the faculty, and then the faculty will engage with the brand page, and whether they're commenting on posts or sharing posts. Facebook has been a very good organic sort of communication tool, and we double down a little bit when we do some targeted ads to really try to put content in front of specific demographics. And it's not even necessarily content that is promoting the school in a sense, apply now, so on and so forth. It's putting an announcement in front of specific folks that, hey, we have a nursing info session coming up. This may be of interest to you. And then the NAG tag, I like that, you should trademark that, pops up, and you see that there are folks trying to let their friends know that this is coming up and it might be a helpful resource for them. I'm experimenting with private Facebook groups too, to see if that's a mechanism through which we can build community with, even if it's just with our selective programs right now, because there's some very specific questions that come down those different funnels. And if we can address them in a manner that's you can address them quickly, you really have a solid sense of customer service, and that can help the students establish some trust with the students, and then we can get them to speak on our behalf when the time's right.
Oh, well, I gotta unmute myself. This is something, it's a nice segue into something we were talking about before we went live in content strategy, and how much of a buzzword it is now in higher ed marketing and admissions. But Eric, you were talking about what content you put for ads versus what you're putting out on Facebook. And I know you have some thoughts on improving content strategy and how important it is around admitted students, especially, but even as a whole. Maybe you could unpack that for us.
Definitely. So prior to my role in admissions and in recruitment, I spent 6 years, well, not in the same role, but I was assistant director of the Center for Academic Success, and then I became the director of the Center for Academic Success at Eastern Nazarene College. So it helped me understand sort of the full life cycle of the student, from pre-enrollment to matriculation to trying to retain these students. And that's sort of the lens through which I think when it comes to content that we create from an admissions perspective. because not only do I want to get these students in the door, I want to equip them with the knowledge and information that they can use as they progress through their experience at the college. And if we can remove some barriers and some hurdles on the front end and be prescriptive in a sense, we can address questions that students have before they even come up. And creating engaging content that's funny and it introduces the student body to specific people that are housed in these different offices. It makes the financial aid office much more approachable. And then so just piggyback off the financial aid video, our registrar's office also did a fun video where they were pretending they were at the beach because we have our summer enrollment coming up. So in an effort to let prospective students and current students know that the summer schedule was available, they set up beach chairs in the registrar's office and they pretended that they had their sunscreen on and they were going to the beach. But they were not necessarily selling anything in particular, just to let people know that the things that they were looking for. And I think anybody that's creating content for an institution of higher education, you really need to think about the pain points that the students experience, that the parents experience, that the stakeholders experience. And it's fun to create engaging content, but you have to have a specific mission in mind and what is it that you're trying to accomplish. And at the end of the day, yield is important, but also student satisfaction is important. So these are all different metrics that need to be considered when building these types of campaigns.
It's such a good point. And Casey, you kind of talked about this too in extending your 1-day campaign to a 7-day and some of the content that you asked people to post. What actually works and what were they willing to do?
Yeah, so we tried to come up with all different ways that they could post content. So one was, post that you've decided to attend ASU with #FutureSunnoval. And then one was, post to thank a family member for helping you get to college, and post to a photo with your friends who maybe are coming with you to ASU. And then one was post a photo from your hometown so we could see Sun Devils around the world, things like that. And I think had we done them as separate campaigns, they would have been more successful. But trying to do it all in 1 week and say, hey, every day post about being a Sun Devil on your Instagram account, and then the students today will now delete a post on Instagram if it doesn't get enough likes. So the idea of having 7 days of content about basically the same topic, their own friends, the people who follow them and like their content, are going to get really tired of it. And so, it was a learning curve for us to say, okay, we can't expect students to give us this much bandwidth on their social accounts. They'll do it once at a time, right? Or if there's some incentive, if we're having a contest or something. But really what has worked best for us is finding ways for them to share kind of personally, privately, like not broadcasting it to their accounts, but broadcasting it to our accounts and then sharing it on their behalf. That has seemed to work better for us in general. And then something that we've learned this year as well is asking their opinions has been really helpful. So we create various items to send to students throughout the year. And so we'll come up with 4 different designs for something, and I'll post it on our Instagram account and say, hey, vote for your favorite. And then the one that gets the most votes is the one we actually create and send out to students. And so that generally gets us 75 to 150 comments on an Instagram post based on the idea that this student might get that item. So, we can't always guarantee every student who comments is getting it, but at least they feel like their voice is heard, and we do go with the thing that they like the most. We try to A/B test just about every publication we make, things like that. We always have our design team hanging out at our campus visits and asking our campus visitors to come look at an array of photos to say, which one would you want to see on the cover of the view book we hand you, and try to pick what the students like. Because something we've learned is that we are not 17 and we don't know what students like. And the thing that resonates the most with us as adults who've already gone to college is not what resonates with students who are thinking about their future and thinking about where they want to spend their lives and where they're going to fit. And so we ask for their feedback because we get much richer content and something we know they're going to enjoy, but then also tons of engagement on our posts. And it happened recently, I posted something that just had 4 versions of something that was not a poll. It was just like, hey, we have these multiple options. And we had a couple comments of students saying, I like this one most. So we've somehow gotten them trained to be giving us their opinion when we post different options for stuff.
I love that. Something you said reminded me, this idea of social clout, and that, you know, if you don't get your 11 likes on Instagram, students are going to delete that photo. And, you know, one of the reasons why you ask people for snaps is so that it wouldn't show up in their news feed. Maybe talk a little bit about how that's changed over the years, because I remember about 6 years ago when I first started, everything was about, you know, promoting your brand and about like what college you got into. And now I think students are really maybe a little more intentional with what they're posting online. And I know you have some thoughts about that, and maybe talk about how you've uncovered that and what you've seen.
Yeah, well, even just most recently with our May 1 campaign, when we asked students to post on, you know, Twitter and Instagram that they've been admitted, they're choosing ASU, they're coming, they're going to be a future Sun Devil. On Instagram, I'd say it was about half and half of a photo they took that day versus a curated photo that was from their senior photo shoot or their graduation photos or something, you know, with perfect lighting and the perfect filter. And so it was about half and half on what the look was of those posts. And so I think that's just one example of showing that the students really care what they're putting out there. It's not all about just being part of the mass. So I feel like a couple years ago when hashtags, and couples even far back, right? But 4 or 5 years ago when hashtags were really the big way to get connected with people, it was all about using your hashtag as much as possible. And we see that on Instagram still, right? People will add 20 hashtags to a post, but it really is looking at it now, students are posting less often. Or I'll even see that they might tag us in a post, but they don't mention anything about ASU. So they want us to see it. They want future Sun Devils to interact with it, but they're not necessarily highlighting it to their family and friends that, hey, you know, yelling it from the rooftops that they're a Sun Devil all of the time. So they like those certain times to do it, and they like it if their friends are doing it too for their own schools. But we've just noticed that we get fewer interactions with our hashtags, and some of that is looking at the content that they are tagging us on is a little bit more curated. You know, it's picture perfect. It's not just in the spur of the moment. If we ask for a post, they're going to go back through their camera roll and find their best post. So that's been an interesting change this last couple of years.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And it still counts as engagement. So even though they're not using your hashtag, if they are tagging you or if they've done your location, you guys still count that as a win, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I go through every day and check all of our notifications and try to find students. One of the other things that's happened is, you know, students privatize things more now. So they may be using our hashtag, but if it's not a public post, we can't always see it if we're not following each other. So that has come into play too. Students have their Instagram that has all their crazy stuff on it, and then they have their fake Instagram, their Finstagram, where they post the stuff mom and dad can see and that colleges and things can see. And I think students are just getting more savvy. They've been warned of the dangers of social media and how it can hurt your reputation when you're older, and so they just are more curated in general about what they post, so that there is a specific image of them online. And where this ends up being a negative for them is, you know, in our private social network, students are trying to find roommates. They're looking for people to be their best friends. And sometimes they go on and look at their social networks and think, oh, I don't like this person because of what they're posting about, and not realizing that this person's not giving you a full view of who they are. You know, maybe their Instagram account is, you know, all about heavy metal bands. And so you decide you don't like them because you don't like heavy metal bands, except that's just one thing about them. And they also really like watching Netflix shows and going out to the movies and cheering on the Sun Devils, and you're just not getting that feel from them. And so there's some judgment pretty quickly as well from students themselves looking at each other and their social networks. But I can tell for the most part, they are trying to get their social networks to see each other and know that each other is cool and fun and they should hang out. So in our private network, they post a lot about, hey, follow me on Snapchat, follow me on Instagram. They want the clout of people following them to see this picture perfect life that they're curating for themselves.
Yeah, it's a really good point. We've got Will from, I think, University of Manchester, who was tweeting, who just asked a question, are they not sharing as much or not sharing as much on public facing apps? I vote they're still sharing as much privately. And I think you really nailed the head on that, or hit the nail on the head on that one. And I think Will's probably right that that actually is what's happening. So my next question then, and this is for both of you, and maybe Eric, you can chime in here. Now that all of these social media platforms are becoming similar, now that Snapchat does the same thing that Instagram does, and Facebook, you can go live and there's Insta stories and Snap stories. What does that mean for how we're communicating and trying to engage our admitted students? Eric, maybe you want to go first?
Sure. I think you can't discredit one just because, say, Snapchat, for example, Instagram is stealing a lot of the functionality. I think you're still going to have your diehard Snapchat fans. And really, at the end of the day, for me, it comes down to understanding who your students are, who your community is, and where they're hanging out. You don't really want to hang out on MySpace if nobody's on MySpace, but comparison. But I just think marketing teams, and I'll give my team props again, that they're pretty phenomenal with adapting and being well versed with sort of the current trends and trying to understand how we can interweave content and create content that is shareable across or consumable across different platforms if you sort of manipulate it ever so slightly to fit the individual context of each platform. But I think it's a never-ending story, if you will, where you're going to have to constantly iterate, and when you get to the point when you're done learning and you're done evolving and you're done listening, I think you need to segue and jump into a different role, because you can't discredit one just because it's the components are being adopted by another company or another group. You may end up losing a whole lot of your following just by giving up on one platform. And I'll go back to saying again, you should be consistent. Make sure you are clear with the message that you're wanting to get across, and make sure that that's conveyed, whether it be still video or still images, video, or whatever. Make sure your end work backwards.
Yeah, I think that that maybe the platforms are trying to figure out how to get to this private one-on-one sharing by doing things like the stories and giving new features and augmented reality. But I don't know if that's working. I think maybe we have to invite somebody maybe we'll invite Mark Zuckerberg on. He can tell us the stats on whether or not that's working. Casey, do you have any thoughts on that before we move on to the next question? Anything Eric said that, didn't resonate?
No, I mean, I agree with him that it is about finding out what can be differentiated on each one so that they're worth it. I'm still pretty much a one-man team for social media, and, I have help with graphics and things like that, but boots on the ground making a story happen is usually me. And so it's not always possible for us to do it all. We might do something on Snapchat that we don't do on Instagram. And what I've seen with a lot of universities is that they're using Instagram stories for a more professional look, and they're keeping Snapchat for that personal, like student takeover kind of thing, student to student messaging. And the Instagram, because it is created where you can upload more outside content and you can add links and do things like that, they're finding it easier to kind of tell a more professional story that way. We did try with our visit day. We have a huge event called More to Explore, and that was the first time we encouraged students to send us snaps of their day. We did also have another staff person going out trying to tell the story of what More to Explore was like using our Instagram account. And we didn't get as many views. It was about half as seen, I would say. So that was a good anecdotal use of it, as okay, the students sending us the content and getting it on there versus us trying to go find content and put on there. Here's the difference. And that was when Instagram stories were quite new. So it's definitely not something that I would say, oh, we're only going to do one or the other. But I'm also not one to just say, well, let's make sure we're on everything right now and going full force on everything right now. Let's really think through, how are other people doing this well? What's our point of view on this? How could we be using this? So even with Snapchat, I waited about a year and a half watching other universities doing it to see how are they getting away with this, and what are they able to post that would be interesting to students, and you know, how safe is it, right? Because it started out as a pretty private photo sharing app. And so was that really a place for a institution to be? And so once I kind of saw how people were using it, getting creative, and people were reacting to it, it was like, okay, we could try this and jump into it. So I don't think it's right to just, because there's stories now on every app, to say, okay, let's start making stories on every app. Really being able to think through what your content is. And I think Eric was saying this too, but putting content where it's most relevant to you or where the particular population is can be most important for you going forward. So I wouldn't just jump into all of them, but find the right story to tell on each one.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And actually, I've got a question for you from Eric. This one I think is for you, from our friend Will on Twitter too, because I think you'll be able to answer. How are you extending the life of user-generated content on other media and in print? Evergreen stories are always nice, and I know that you tweeted out a link to the Snap story that you were talking about, the financial aid one. So maybe you could talk about how you're repurposing some of this content on these private networks. And Casey, if you have some examples to chime in.
I have to give credit to the marketing team again, because they're the one that's taking the legs. I just planted some seeds, and they really buckled down and did the development and the planning and the deployment of every single piece of content strategy that's come from that initial conversation. But I think what they've done is they've found ways to make it graphically fit within the context of a YouTube video, because you obviously have the vertical video, so creating a frame that fits nicely on YouTube with some added images and some added text, finding ways to integrate that into email marketing. So for example, if your students didn't view the video on the date it was originated, we can plug it again with an email campaign that's going out highlighting an upcoming FAFSA workshop. And then since you're interested in FAFSA, you may be interested in this particular video as well, to sort of highlight what we have going on in the office and meet some people that you will interface with once you arrive on campus. And that's obviously going to be living on YouTube for however long it's on YouTube, and then integrating the same video on Facebook too. And then I've even seen it on Instagram as a short little blurb, then redirecting to a landing page on our website or something like that. And at the end of the day, video, images, any content, I like to have it driving back to a website. If they're not part of our community via email list, drive them to a place where they can opt in and give us information to have that ongoing dialogue. So with regards to sort of longevity and legs, I think really, really hard to build those landing pages to capture that data, to use the video as sort of the entry point, get them comfortable with us so they can provide us with their information, so we can provide additional education and follow up as they go through their entire sort of application journey. Hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, that's smart. Yeah. So Casey, I have to ask you, with your 275 snaps and the 1 second long, did you save that story? Is that up on YouTube?
We did save it, but we have not put it anywhere. I don't know about you guys. I find Snapchat stories less fun to watch when you can't skip through them, right? When you can't tap and make them go faster. So I do have it saved so that we could use it in the future. What we actually did was I had 6 snaps that were the intro that was introducing that it was Future Sendable Day. We want you to send a post. Here's something that you can screenshot and sign, so get ready. And then that post. And that we immediately saved and put on Twitter to encourage people to say, hey, go to our Snapchat today. This is what's happening there. But something we've done is we've done some Snapchat housing tours. So we've had different community assistants or peer mentors who live in the residence halls go in and give a tour of some of the amenities of each hall and the floor plans, because that's the main thing students want to see. They want to see the room. They want to actually see where they're going to be living for the next year. And so we've been doing Snapchat tours, and then the intent, they haven't gone up yet, but the intent is to then put them on our housing website with each hall. So when you go to the hall page, you're looking through the hall, you can see a floor plan. You can also then watch the Snapchat video of a student touring you through the hall and telling you about some of the amenities of the hall, you know, the free laundry or the pool table, the fitness area, those kinds of things that they care about, those amenities they want to know about. So that is one way that we're trying to give it life is, hey, day of, you can watch it on Snapchat, and that's exciting. And then it'll live on the website later, so that students next year, we won't have to redo the housing tour every year or every few months, but students next year can also see a Snapchat housing tour. And same thing, you have to make it horizontally viewable, so add some graphics on the sides. Let them know they can follow us for more information, things like that.
Smart. Okay, so our friends from Ology of Furman Columbus just chimed in with a nice segue too, that engagement is not always the only goal, and to consider some other important KPIs. And my next question happens to be, how do you identify a successful social media campaign for admitted students? What is it that you're measuring, and how can you track clean data to see what effect engaging these students online actually has? So I don't know who wants to go first on this, on identifying a successful campaign and what measurements you use, but you guys can duke it out. Eric, you want to go?
I'm a pacifist. I'm not much of a fighter, but certainly. And I think the answer to this question is sort of based in an inbound marketing philosophy where you have custom landing pages to capture data. And again, that really goes down to the type of campaign and what is it that you're trying to accomplish. And I'll reference our nursing info session. So we were able to create a custom landing page where students could opt in, and that the primary drivers to that website were social media posts or targeted advertisements. So I would say over the course of maybe a month and a half, 2 months, we've had almost 1,000 form submissions. So I think that's a good metric, but again, we have to take it a step further. We have to nurture those leads and determine actually how many actually showed up to the info session, and then take it a step further. We can utilize that data to determine how many of those students hadn't applied at the point at which they submitted the form, and then how many students applied after submitting the form. So it takes some hands on the ground, feet on the ground, whatever you want to call it, to do the dirty work and dig a little bit deeper. But I think sort of, I'm still here, I think. Again, it comes down to sort of the end goal and the metrics that you want to assess. And for us in this particular case, it was we wanted inquiries, and then we wanted to nurture those inquiries into applicants. Yeah, I'm rambling. Go ahead, Casey.
Yeah, a lot of our social media is reactive. I suppose that's a word. We use social media as a way to provide service and, answer questions, provide good customer service, make students feel a part of the community. And so it's less of a lead generator for us and more of a once they've raised their hand and said, hey, ASU might be for me, to really connect with them and make them feel a personal connection with the university. We know we're big. We know we're a large university. And one of the things that sets us apart is helping to make students feel wanted and know that just because we're big doesn't mean that you as a person aren't important to us, and all of your needs are the most important to us. So that's something that I look for, is really that positive to negative sentiment. Are we having a good week? Is everybody who's posting happy about something, or at least neutral? Are they having issues? And if they are having issues, how quickly can we help them correct that, or at least get a satisfactory response about something? So that has been a main driver for us. And then based on, just doing like little comparisons. So, okay, I posted a video this week versus a video last week. How did that play? What kind of engagement did it get? Sometimes you can do year-to-date stuff, but now, especially with how quickly the social networks are changing, those metrics cannot be similar. So right in the last year, Instagram implemented their algorithm. So now it's not just every post the minute it's posted in your feed. It's now curated to the content you're most likely to interact with, similar to Facebook. And so that has seen a decrease for us overall in our engagement. So I can't always say, okay, well, May 1 this year versus May 1 last year, they're different and this is good or bad. But I can say, oh, well, last month it was like this, and this month it's similar to this, or better or worse. what's different about that. So I tend to do smaller increments of adjustment and comparison rather than year to date, because sometimes just the features that you can do on a network are so different from year to year that it's not always that clean data that you're looking for. So that's something that we keep in mind.
Those are all really good points. And I know we're coming down to the end of the hour here, so I'm going to drop the big question on you guys, and we can spend the last few minutes talking about that. Are social media campaigns for admitted students over? I mean, that's what the episode is called, and we've talked about how to measure, what some tactics that have worked, what some haven't, how students are using social media, how social media platforms are all apparently all the same. So what camp are you guys in? Eric, you're up first.
I would say, based on the data that Casey provided, I would say no. I think as we know it, they're probably over, but if you're a forward-thinking practitioner like Casey is, you're going to come up with innovative ideas and innovative ways to capture a similar type of sentiment from students. And at the end of the day, you're trying to engage with students and get them excited about transitioning to your institution. And I think she's been able to do that. And I think if you have leaders across the spectrum of higher education taking a similar approach to Casey, then they'll be here. They'll just be different.
Well, thanks, Eric. I agree. I don't think they're over. I think they're different. And so students are less interested in being part of the whole and more interested in being an individual and standing out. And so I think the more we can switch our admitted student campaigns to being about the student themselves and not the cohort as a whole, you're going to find students interacting more and appreciating the effort more. So they're going to feel that personalization and feel that fit, right? Knowing that I'm going to this institution because they care about me, I'm going to be successful here, has become more of the point. So it's less about, hey, we had more hashtags than anybody else, and more about we were able to, individually affect this many students. Whether or not our other students know that or not, it's important that those students who felt the connection from us got that connection.
And could I jump in to sort of, this is not where the conversation should end. This is where student affairs professionals, I think, should pick up the ball and run with it, because the brand handles will obviously be there, but if we can have student development clubs, housing, cafeteria, whatever, sort of continue the conversation and maintain that level of, we'll call it customer service, because it is, then the long-term impact is going to be greater, and you're going to have students are going to become alumni, and they're going to be donors, and then they're going to start singing the praises of the institution. So I think we need to look at this as an entire spectrum, not just sort of from the admissions perspective.
I honestly can't end this episode any better than that. I feel like that was such a great note, that we're all in this together, that everything we're putting out on all these social campaigns for admitted students, for accepted students, we're all one big team, and it's all interconnected. I think that was just a really, really good way to end it. Unless, Casey, you want to completely disagree and say it's all up to admissions and nobody else has any. She's like not saying that on record.
Not saying that at all. I greatly appreciate all of the people that work with our current student population is much larger than our admitted student population. So it's a much bigger job, and I'm happy to hand them off as best I can. That's my job, is to bring them in happy and keep them here.
Love all the way around. I love it. So thank you, everybody who tuned in, who asked questions today. This has been a really great episode. Don't forget to download it as a podcast or on higheredlive.com. Thanks especially to Casey and Eric for joining us today and for sharing your insights. It was really wonderful to have both of you guys talk about this, and I know we kind of threw it together on the fly, so I really appreciate that. Thanks as always to our program sponsor, M. Stoner, and don't forget to check back for more episodes on higheredlive.com, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.